Danger. The emergency destruct system is now activated.
Game over, man. It's game over. Now what the fuck are we supposed to do? We're some real pretty shit now, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
I don't think there's a hell of a lot I can do. We're at the mercy of the computer. We're gonna have to blow the computer.
Some mofo butter laying into the bone, jacking me up.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Cuddy say can't hang.
Nervous?
Yes.
First time?
No, I've been nervous lots of times. Why the hell aren't I notified about these things?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit amphetamines. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue. It's your wife. I want the kids in bed by night. I want the dog fed, the yard watered, and the gate locked. And get a note to the milkman. No more cheese.
You know, just like to fall in the mud and get kicked in the head by an iron boot. Of course you don't. No one does. That never happens. Sorry, Ted. It's a dumb question. Skip that.
This isn't fair.
Would you rather be alone?
My advice to you, start drinking heavily.
Disturbs my slumber.
Supposedly he's got a lawyer with $25,000 in a brown paper bag.
Follow the money.
What do you mean? Where?
Oh, I can't tell you that.
But you could tell me that.
No, I have to do this my way. You tell me what you know, and I'll confirm. I'll keep you in the right direction if I can, but that's all. Just follow the money.
You're hurting my feelings. Please don't cry.
But I feel so helpless just sitting around here doing nothing.
Sometimes there's so much beauty in the world. I feel like I can't take it.
Wow, look at you. Have you been working out?
I think you just became my personal hero.
It's just our couch!
No. You don't get to tell me what to do. Ever again.
The eyes, my friends. What a wonderful creation. And you may want to look into the cornea and the lens for all the answers to how you see the world out there. And this, a flat world on a 3D plane. The cornea, which is a convex lens, and the lens itself, which is concave and defines your vision. The furthest point in the sky is always the lowest point on the horizon, as your eyes grab the sky and forms a bubble around you. I repeat, the furthest point in the sky that you can see is always the lowest point on the horizon, as your eyes grab the sky and wraps it all around you. The horizon, where the earth and sky meet, and what is beyond your vision, your perspective of vision, and what you can see, falls into the void. The bottom of the bubble is always the furthest point in the sky that you can see within your perspective. Move forward, move backwards, side to side, and your perspective moves along with you. Your eyes, the cornea, and the lens, and your brain create these illusions for you. There's no need to crack any eggs over this. They do all the work for you. Your eyes, that is, and your brain, the super motherboard that creates all reality here on Earth. Flat Earth, that is. cornea and lens work somewhat like a fisheye lens from a camera, as they form the perception of the world around you, but way more advanced than any creation we could ever invent, wrapping you within your very own bubble.
Watch the center of this disc. You are getting sleepy. No, just kidding. I'm not going to hypnotize you. But are you starting to see colors in the rings? If so, your eyes are playing tricks on you. The disc was only ever black and white. You see, your eyes don't always capture the world as a video camera would. In fact, there are quite a few differences, owing to the anatomy of your eye and the processing that takes place in your brain and its outgrowth, the retina. Let's start with some similarities. Both have lenses to focus light and sensors to capture it, but even those things behave differently. The lens in a camera moves to stay focused on an object hurtling towards it, while the one in your eye responds by changing shape. Most camera lenses are also achromatic, meaning they focus both red and blue light to the same point. Your eye is different. When red light from an object is in focus, the blue light is out of focus. So why don't things look partially out of focus all the time? To answer that question, we first need to look at how your eye and the camera capture light. Photoreceptors. The light-sensitive surface in a camera only has one kind of photoreceptor that is evenly distributed throughout the focusing surface. An array of red, green, and blue filters on top of these photoreceptors causes them to respond selectively to long, medium, and short wavelength light. Your eye's retinas, on the other hand, have several types of photoreceptors, usually 3 for normal light conditions, and only 1 type for low light, which is why we're colorblind in the dark. In normal light, unlike the camera, we have no need for a color filter because our photoreceptors already respond selectively to different wavelengths of light. Also, in contrast to a camera, your photoreceptors are unevenly distributed, with no receptors for dim light in the very center. This is why faint stars seem to disappear when you look directly at them. The center also has very few receptors that can detect blue light, which is why you don't notice the blurred blue image from earlier. However, you still perceive blue there because your brain fills it in from context. Also, the edges of our retinas have relatively few receptors for any wavelength light, so our visual acuity and ability to see color falls off rapidly from the center of our vision. There is also an area in our eyes called the blind spot, where there are no photoreceptors of any kind. We don't notice a lack of vision there because, once again, our brain fills in the gaps. In a very real sense, we see with our brains, not our eyes. And because our brains, including the retinas, are so involved in the process, we are susceptible to visual illusions. Here's another illusion caused by the eye itself. Does the center of this image look like it's jittering around? That's because your eye actually jiggles most of the time. If it didn't, your vision would eventually shut down because the nerves on the retina stop responding to a stationary image of constant intensity. And unlike a camera, you briefly stop seeing whenever you make a larger movement with your eyes. That's why you can't see your own eyes shift as you look from one to the other in a mirror. Video cameras can capture details our eyes miss, magnify distant objects, and accurately record what they see. But our eyes are remarkably efficient adaptations, co-evolution with our brains. And so what if we don't always see the world exactly as it is? There's a certain joy to be found watching stationary leaves waving on an elusive breeze.
Noticed here that the clouds always rise up to the sky, coming from the bottom of the bubble and rising up onto the top of the bubble. Here we have rainbows, lights dancing on a mist of air, forming a prism of colors. And for the distance it travels, the light is wrapped around you by your eyes, forming a bubble of its own.
Walk the tightrope of goodness and hold on for so long till the wind blows. Try to knock my socks off, quick kick dojo.
Enjoy the numerous images of rainbows here, my friends. They come in different size, shapes, and colors, and always shaped into a bubble. Half of the bubble, that is. The other half lost to the concavity of your eyes.
When the day is done and the sun is set, when the night is young and I'm on a jet plane across the sky, planes across the night. Buffalo roam with my tone of homegrown, homebound when I sound like a tornado. Some love but they can't be. I grow like an oak tree. Another hypocrites fall down when I sneeze. Another liars and thieves return to your evil deeds. Cycles and circles, round and round like a merry-go-round. Been a tree till I fall down. Now I walk in the mud, play with my shit. Stomp through the sludge, cause I'm cool with it. Much more comfortable, trudge through the mess. Sack king, so lovable, double time like all the rest. Open doors until they shut, till I'm down, so down. Fake smiles in the gut, going hard like marbles and stone. So stone, can't feel making unknowns known. Medicate till they all go away, till the wind blows and the leaves fall away. When the day is done and the sun is set, when the night is young and I'm on a jet plane across the sky, planes across the night. Buffalo roam with my tone of homegrown, homebound when I sound like a tornado. Some love but they can't feel. I grow like an oak tree. Another hypocrites fall down when I sneeze. Another liars and thieves return to your evil deeds. When the day is done and the sun is set, when the night is young and I'm on a jet plane across the sky, planes across the night. Buffalo roam with my tone of homegrown, homebound when I sound like a tornado. Some love but they can't feel. I grow like an oak tree. Another hypocrites fall down when I sneeze. Another liars and thieves return to your evil deeds. Walk the tightrope of goodness and hold on for so long till the wind blows. Try to knock my socks off, quick kick dojo. Razor sharp like a shark, emotions grow. Knowledge is self till my foes and windows open. Music's up and the wind is blowing. Rainbows like second chances come and go till the rain glows.
The rainbow as we know it is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. Roy G. Biv. I'm ignoring indigo because, let's be honest, indigo? But where exactly is violet? Is it at the end here? This dark blue? And what's this brighter light blue-green? Cyan, perhaps? So why don't we say the rainbow is red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue? Roy G. Well, we actually do, and we've just forgotten. When Isaac Newton originally observed a rainbow of light split by a prism and made his labeling of the colors as red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, the thing he called blue was indeed what we would now call blue-green, or teal or cyan, reminiscent of the color of the blue sky. And what we now tend to call blue, Newton called violet, as in roses are red, violets are blue. Dark blue. He only included indigo in his fundamental 7 colors of the rainbow so that they would match the number of notes of the Western musical scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Yeah. Purple, magenta, and hot pink, as we know, don't occur in the rainbow from a prism, because they can only be made as a combination of red and blue light, and those are on opposite sides of the rainbow, nowhere near overlapping. So there is no purple or hot pink in the rainbow from a prism. Violet is there in the roses are red, violets are blue sense, but purple is not. So then why do rainbows in the sky often look like they have purple in them? I suspect sometimes it's an optical illusion whereby nice deep blues in small amounts surrounded by a lighter color appear purplish to our eyes. However, sometimes purple and pink really are there, because a rainbow is really a rain disk. Each color of sunlight reflects back in a bright rimmed disk, all of different sizes, which together add up to make a white disk with a colorful rim. But because light is a wave, interference from the raindrops themselves actually gives each disk multiple rings. The familiar outer ring is just the brightest. The others are called supernumerary rings, and are the source of supernumerary rainbows. The smaller the raindrops, the stronger the supernumerary bows. And if the drops are the right size, the first red supernumerary ring can overlap significantly with the main violet ring. And what do red and violet give? Purple. So as the saying goes, roses are red, violets are blue, and purple in a rainbow is a supernumerary hue.
least 5 features to be accounted for. Assuming that you're not entirely satisfied with explanations based on divine intervention or sacrificial rites, then you might be interested in looking at some mathematical models and the history of how they developed into today's explanation. The mathematical approach is to develop a model and then refine it to fit the data. Over the years, there have been many theories, but all have been lacking in some aspects. One stumbling block which lasted for centuries was a controversy over whether the rainbow involves an entire cloud or individual raindrops. The Greek philosopher Aristotle, in about 300 BC, constructed an explanatory model which assumed that the entire heavens were a sphere. At the center of the Greeks' universe was the Earth, and so at dawn, say, the sun is on the horizon at the edge of the universe. Aristotle argued that the rainbow effect was then caused by the reflection of sunlight on a cloud, at a point where the distances from the sun and from the earthbound observer were in exactly the right fixed ratio. An easier way to think of this is that the angle between the rays will be fixed. Aristotle said that the rainbow had a circular shape because the universe was spherical. So the same effect would be created in all directions. Rotating the diagram about the line from the sun to the earthbound observer gives 2 cones of light, one spreading out from the sun, surrounding an inner one converging on the observer's eye. You'll be seeing that this part of the model isn't very different to our present-day explanation of a bow's circularity. But Aristotle's view fell down in other respects, and particularly when it came to explaining the colors. He said that red light was stronger than, say, blue, because red traveled a shorter distance from the sun to the cloud. That made the critical ratio slightly smaller for blue, and that's why the red cone of light surrounds the blue cone, and hence the red arc is seen outside the blue arc.
Camino rojo que llevas al mar, en la sangre y en el agua está, brota la vida como un manantial. Camino rojo que llevas al mar, en la sangre y en el agua está, brota la vida como un manantial. Camino rojo que llevas al mar, en la sangre y en el agua está.
Perché? Sono certo che ti farà bene sfogarti un po'. È andata male, è andata male, è andata male, è andata male.
Dreams, can they influence your life and determine the outcome of your reality? Are we living in a peaceful dream state or a perpetual nightmare?
How do you know you're real? It's an obvious question until you try to answer it. But let's take it seriously. How do you really know you exist? In his Meditations on First Philosophy, René Descartes tried to answer that very question, demolishing all his preconceived notions and opinions to begin again from the foundations. All his knowledge had come from his sensory perceptions of the world, same as you, right? You know you're watching this video with your eyes, hearing it with your ears. Your senses show you the world as it is. They aren't deceiving you, but sometimes they do. You might mistake a person far away for someone else, or you're sure you're about to catch a fly ball and it hits the ground in front of you. But come on, right here and now, you know what's right in front of you is real. Your eyes, your hands, your body, that's you. Only crazy people would deny that, and you know you're not crazy. Anyone who'd doubt that must be dreaming. Oh no. What if you're dreaming? Dreams feel real. You can believe you're swimming, flying, or fighting off monsters with your bare hands when your real body is lying in bed. No. When you're awake, you know you're awake. But when you aren't, you don't know you aren't. So you can't prove you aren't dreaming. Maybe the body you perceive yourself to have isn't really there. Maybe all of reality, even its abstract concepts like time, shape, color, and number, are false. All just deceptions concocted by an evil genius. No, seriously. Descartes asks if you can disprove the idea that an evil genius demon has tricked you into believing reality is real. Perhaps this diabolical deceiver has duped you. The world, your perceptions of it, your very body, you can't disprove that they're all just made up. And how could you exist without them? You couldn't. So, you don't. Life is but a dream. And I bet you aren't rowing the boat merrily at all, are you? No, you're rowing it wearily, like the duped, non-existent doof you are/aren't. Do you find that convincing? Are you persuaded? If you aren't, good. If you are, even better. Because by being persuaded, you would prove that you're a persuaded being. You can't be nothing if you think you're something, even if you think that something is nothing. Because no matter what you think, you're a thinking thing. Or as Descartes put it, I think, therefore I am. And so are you. Really.
Dreams can tell us a lot about ourselves, as well as to help us process the world around us in a different plane. But there is much more to dreams than just falling asleep. Here are 10 mind-blowing facts about dreams. Sleep paralysis. When we enter rapid eye movement sleep, or better known as the REM stage, our brain releases a chemical in our body so that we are paralyzed to movement. This makes it so we don't act out our dreams while we're asleep. However, sometimes we wake up while the chemical is still active in our body and we hallucinate as well as being unable to move, thus causing the terrifying phenomenon known as sleep paralysis. Pleasure in our sleep. It is not uncommon for people to have orgasms while they're dreaming, especially during vivid dreams. Given the fact that we can see, feel, and even have the sensation of touching in our dreams, it's no surprise that there will be responses in the body to those sensations. Sometimes these dreams can result in wet dreams for males. Animals dream too. Yep, when you see Fido moving his leg like he's chasing a cat or a rabbit, he might actually be having that dream his body's responding to. Studies have shown that animals have similar brainwaves to humans while they're in their dream cycles, which indicates that your household pet may be dreaming about you dropping that steak or giving them the last piece of bacon. No strangers allowed. When we dream about other people, even people we don't think we have met, they all have faces that we have seen in our real lives. Our brains aren't capable of creating or visualizing a unique face, but instead it takes inspiration from faces we have seen in our waking lives. So that creepy stranger you might see in your dreams is actually someone you have already met. Men versus women. Men tend to have more aggressive dreams than women. They tend to dream more about other men as well, while women tend to dream equally about both genders. But interestingly enough, firstborn males don't have as many aggressive dreams, and firstborn women have more aggressive dreams. It just goes to show how similar yet wonderfully different men and women can be. So many feels. We tend to process our feelings in our dreams, and the most common emotion we experience in our dream is anxiety. Insecurities and fears are dominant in our dreams and take different forms to express itself, such as the fear of cheating on a spouse or the embarrassment of showing up to work or school naked. This is probably why some of the most common dreams include being chased by an unknown assailant and falling. Dreams aplenty. On average, we have about 6 to 7 dreams per night. Of course, we are seldom able to remember all of them. In a single year, we can have anywhere between 1,460 to 2,190 dreams. That's a lot to process in our dreams. And if we were to remember every dream we'd ever had, we'd be overwhelmed. Symbolism. What we see in our dreams tends to symbolize something else that we are trying to process. This is why numerous books have been written trying to explain certain things that we see. For example, if you see dirty water in your dream, it is believed that you might have a health issue that your body is trying to communicate to you. If you dream that you are pregnant and giving birth, it might not be as simple as that you're going to have a baby, but instead that you are in the process of creating a new idea. Dream and perception. We tend to dream according to our perception of life. This can cause certain phenomena in our dreams, where we might not be able to dream in color, but instead dream in black and white. Our perception of life can intertwine with our dreams, and outside forces can influence the course of our dreams while we sleep. For example, a noise that might be going off in the room you're sleeping in may be interpreted as something else in your dream, but it will have the same sound. Think of the buzzer of an alarm clock in real life, and it may be a bird or even an ambulance in your dreams. Forget-me-not. Dreams are very forgettable. In fact, within 5 minutes of waking up, we forget over 50% of our dream. And 10 minutes after we wake up, we forget our dreams almost entirely. So if you want to keep a dream journal, you will want to keep it right beside your bed so you're able to write everything down almost immediately after waking up. Some studies have indicated that when we remember a dream in real life, that is why we have déjà vu.
Dreams provide a world in which we escape from reality into the mind and seemingly have little control over what happens. But what if you could know you were dreaming and subsequently control the dream? It turns out, lucid dreaming is entirely possible, and with a little effort and practice, even you can do it. Now, some of you might be saying, I don't even dream, but the truth is, everybody has about 3 to 7 dreams a night. The problem is, we quickly forget them. The first strategy towards lucid dreaming is keeping a dream journal. Keeping the journal improves your ability to recall dreams and helps facilitate lucidity. So every time you wake up, write down what you can remember, even if it's nothing, just to form the habit. The next step is performing reality checks. In a dream, something as simple as reading a sentence, counting your fingers, or checking the time can often go astray. Try it right now. Look at the time, look away, and then look back. Assuming you aren't currently dreaming, the time probably stayed the same. However, in a dream, the time or the words you were reading will often completely change. The key is to do these reality checks often when you're awake. This way they become second nature, and when you're dreaming, you're likely to perform the same test and realize that something's wrong. After this comes a technique known as mnemonically induced lucid dreams, or MILD. As you're falling asleep, begin to think of a recent dream and imagine yourself becoming lucid. The idea is to reinforce the intention to realize you're dreaming in your dream. Keep repeating the phrase, I will have a lucid dream tonight. The highest rates of success tend to come if you wake up in the middle of the night, get up for 30 minutes, and then go back to sleep with these intentions in mind. Finally, once you've had success with MILD, an advanced technique known as wake-induced lucid dreams, or WILD, may be attempted. The idea behind this is to keep your mind aware while your body falls asleep. The risk here is that you'll experience sleep paralysis, a completely normal phenomenon that prevents your body from moving during sleep. Except you'll be awake, which can be somewhat frightening. The extra caveat with WILD is that during sleep paralysis, the brain can play tricks on you, inducing strong feelings of fear and causing hallucinations of dark and scary figures approaching you. Scientific research into lucid dreaming has provided an insight into the location of metaconsciousness in the brain, provided opportunities for dream therapy and nightmare recession, and even begged the question if sleep and wakefulness are distinct events or part of a continuum. After all, dreaming of doing something is almost equivalent to actually doing it when looking at the functional system of neuronal activity in your brain. So, are you sure you're not dreaming? Dreams are an amazing phenomenon, and considering you spend roughly 6 years of your life dreaming, it's quite curious that we often brush them aside to be quickly forgotten. Night after night, our brains go to work and bring us some of the most incredible, bizarre, and often seemingly random imagery and storylines. But what are dreams? And like the many science fiction stories or movies, could we ever record and figure out what we're seeing while we're dreaming? You may have heard people referring to brain waves before, but have you ever stopped to think, are these actual waves and do they carry information? Are brain waves similar to, say, radio waves? The answer is yes. Both brain and radio waves are forms of electromagnetic radiation, waves that travel at the speed of light. Every time you think, thousands of neurons fire at the same frequency and generate a wave. These waves oscillate at around 10 to 100 cycles per second. Radio waves, on the other hand, oscillate at around 50 million to 1 billion times per second. Scientists have long used this phenomenon to measure brain activity and interface the brain to electronic devices. It allows us to see which parts of the brain are active for different activities, and similarly, which parts of the brain are active during dreaming. Strange as it may seem, we still barely understand why we sleep, let alone why we dream. Of course, this is subject to forgetting or other errors. Unfortunately, there is no device that exists that allows us to peer into the minds of a dreamer. Or is there? Crazy as it sounds, scientists have created a technique to do just that. This mind-reading technology began with a functional MRI scanner inside which subjects were shown simple pictures made up of black and white pixels. The software then finds patterns in the brain activity that correspond to the specific images. For example, if the letter T was shown, the software would record exactly how the brain reacted. After sufficient data, the subjects were shown completely different images, and the software would predict and recreate what it thought the subjects were seeing. After being shown the word neuron, these were the images the software generated. But it doesn't stop there. Further studies began to use more complex visuals and started monitoring the subjects in their sleep. In this case, they first had the subjects fall asleep while in an fMRI and would wake them up in the middle of dreaming, quickly asking them what they were dreaming about. They then used thousands of images from the internet to get a best approximation of what the subject was seeing based on brain scans. After doing this nearly 200 times with each person and plugging the information into a learning algorithm, software was used to interpret and generate their next dreams. Though by no means perfect, it was clear that the machine's predictions were better than chance, matching up with the dreamer's description. Perhaps even more shocking is a study that used actual video footage. After showing subjects 2 hours of movie footage and analyzing their brain activity, they then used a library of 18 million 1-second YouTube clips to match the brain activity. Here are the results. On the left are new, unrelated clips that the subjects were later shown, and on the right is what the software guessed they were seeing using a mashed up combination of the YouTube clips as an approximation. All of this based on their brain waves. As these software programs become more and more complex, we come that much closer to accurately visualizing and recording our thoughts and dreams, at which point, perhaps, we'll find a few more clues into why we dream in the first place.
Now for our fourth presentation. Take a look inside yourself and tell me what you see. The human body. Let's take a look together. And here are the vital organs of the human body.
For most of history, humans had no idea what purpose the heart served. In fact, the organ so confused Leonardo da Vinci that he gave up studying it. Although everyone could feel their own heart beating, it wasn't always clear what each thump was achieving. Now we know that the heart pumps blood. But that fact wasn't always obvious, because if a heart was exposed or taken out, the body would perish quickly. It's also impossible to see through the blood vessels. And even if that were possible, the blood itself is opaque, making it difficult to see the heart valves working. Even in the 21st century, only a few people in surgery teams have actually seen a working heart. Internet searches for heart function point to crude models, diagrams, or animations that don't really show how it works. It's as if there has been a centuries-old conspiracy amongst teachers and students to accept that heart function cannot be demonstrated, meaning that the next best thing is simply to cut it open and label the parts. That way, students might not fully grasp the way it works, but can superficially understand it, learning such concepts as, the heart is a 4-chambered organ, or potentially misleading statements like, mammals have a dual circulation, one with blood going to the lungs and back, and another to the body and back. In reality, mammals have a figure-8 circulation. Blood goes from one heart pump to the lungs, back to the second heart pump, which sends it to the body, and then back to the first pump. That's an important difference because it marks two completely different morphologies. This confusion makes many students wary of the heart in biology lessons, thinking it signals an intimidating subject full of complicated names and diagrams. Only those who end up studying medicine completely understand how it all actually works. That's when its functions become apparent, as medics get to observe the motion of the heart's valves. So let's imagine you're a medic for a day. What you'll need to get started is a whole, fresh heart. like one from a sheep or pig. Immerse this heart in water, and you'll see that it doesn't pump when squeezed by hand. That's because water doesn't enter the heart cleanly enough for the pumping mechanism to work. We can solve this problem in an extraordinarily simple way. Simply identify the two atria and cut them off, trimming them down to the tops of the ventricles. This makes the heart look less complicated, because the atria have several incoming veins attached, so without them there, the only vessels remaining are the two major heart arteries, the aorta and pulmonary artery, which rise like white columns from between the ventricles. It looks, and really is, very simple. If you run water into the right ventricle from a tap, the left also works, but less spectacularly, you'll see that the ventricular valve tries to close against the incoming stream, and the ventricle inflates with water. Squeeze the ventricle, and a stream of water squirts out of the pulmonary artery. The ventricular valves, called the tricuspid in the right ventricle and the mitral in the left, can be seen through the clear water opening and closing like parachutes, as the ventricle is rhythmically squeezed. This flow of water mimics the flow of blood in life. The valves are completely efficient. You'll notice they don't leak at all when the ventricles are squeezed. Over time, they also close against each other, with very little wear and tear, which explains how this mechanism continues to work seamlessly for more than 2 billion beats a heart gives in its lifetime. Now, anyone studying the heart can hold one in their hands, make it pump for real, and watch the action unfold. So place your hand above your own and feel its rhythmic beat. Understanding how this dependable inner pump works gives new resonance to the feeling you get when you run a race, drink too much caffeine, or catch the eye of the one you love. Many of us have hundreds of things on our minds at any moment, often struggling to keep track of everything we need to do. But fortunately, there's one important thing we don't have to worry about remembering: breathing. When you breathe, you transport oxygen to the body's cells to keep them working, and clear your system of the carbon dioxide that this work generates. Breathing, in other words, keeps the body alive. So how do we accomplish this crucial and complex task without even thinking about it? The answer lies in our body's respiratory system. Like any machinery, it consists of specialized components and requires a trigger to start functioning. Here, the components are the structures and tissues making up the lungs, as well as the various other respiratory organs connected to them. And to get this machine moving, we need the autonomic nervous system, our brain's unconscious control center for the vital functions. As the body prepares to take in oxygen-rich air, this system sends a signal to the muscles around your lungs, flattening the diaphragm and contracting the intercostal muscles between your ribs to create more space for the lungs to expand. Air then whooshes into your nose and mouth, through your trachea, and into the bronchi that split at the trachea's base, with one entering each lung. Like tree branches, these small tubes divide into thousands of tinier passages, called bronchioles. It's tempting to think of the lungs as huge balloons, but instead of being hollow, they're actually spongy inside, with the bronchioles running throughout the parenchyma tissue. At the end of each bronchiole is a little air sac called an alveolus, wrapped in capillaries full of red blood cells containing special proteins called hemoglobin. The air you've breathed in fills these sacs, causing the lungs to inflate. Here is where the vital exchange occurs. At this point, the capillaries are packed with carbon dioxide, and the air sacs are full of oxygen. But due to the basic process of diffusion, the molecules of each gas want to move to a place where there is a lower concentration of their kind. So as oxygen crosses over to the capillaries, the hemoglobin grabs it up, while the carbon dioxide is unloaded into the lungs. The oxygen-rich hemoglobin is then transported throughout the body via the bloodstream. But what do our lungs do with all that carbon dioxide? Exhale it, of course. The autonomic nervous system kicks in again, causing the diaphragm to ball up and the intercostal muscles to relax, making the chest cavity smaller and forcing the lungs to compress. The carbon dioxide-rich air is expelled, and the cycle begins again. So that's how these spongy organs keep our bodies efficiently supplied with air. Lungs inhale and exhale between 15 and 25 times a minute, which amounts to an incredible 10,000 liters of air each day. That's a lot of work, but don't sweat it. Your lungs and your autonomic nervous system have got it covered.
Beneath your ribs, you'll find, among other things, the pancreas, an organ that works a lot like a personal health coach. This organ controls your sugar levels and produces a special juice that releases the nutrients from your food to help keep you in the best possible shape. The pancreas sits just behind your stomach, an appropriate home, as one of its jobs is to break down the food you eat. It aids digestion by producing a special tonic made of water, sodium bicarbonate, and digestive enzymes. Sodium bicarbonate neutralizes the stomach's natural acidity, so these digestive enzymes can perform their jobs. Lipase breaks down fatty substances. Protease splits up proteins, and amylase divides carbohydrates to create energy-rich sugars. Most of those nutrients then get absorbed into the bloodstream and go on to enrich the body. While all this is happening, the pancreas works on another critical task, controlling the amount of sugar in your blood. It achieves this with the hormones insulin and glucagon, which are produced in special cells called the islets of Langerhans. Having too much or too little sugar can be life-threatening, so the pancreas must stay on constant alert. After a big meal, the blood often becomes flushed with sugar. To bring us back to normal, the pancreas releases insulin, which makes the excess sugar move into cells where it's either used as an energy source or stored for later. Insulin also tells the liver to shut down sugar production. On the other hand, if blood sugar is low, the pancreas releases a hormone called glucagon that tells the body's cells and liver to release stored sugars back into the bloodstream. The interplay between insulin and glucagon is what keeps our sugar levels balanced. But a faulty pancreas can no longer coach us like this, meaning that this healthy balance is destroyed. If it's weakened by disease, the organ's ability to produce insulin may be reduced or even extinguished, which can trigger the condition known as diabetes. Without regular insulin release, sugar steadily builds up in the blood, eventually hardening the blood vessels and causing heart attacks, kidney failure, and strokes. The same lack of insulin deprives cells of the energy-rich sugar they need to grow and function. People with diabetes also tend to have higher levels of glucagon, which makes even more sugar circulate. Without this internal health coach, our sugar levels would go haywire, and we wouldn't be able to digest important nutrients. But like any coach, it's not the pancreas's job alone to keep us healthy. It needs our conscious participation too.
There's a factory inside you that weighs about 1.4 kilograms and runs for 24 hours a day. This is your liver, the heaviest organ in your body, and one of the most crucial. This industrious structure simultaneously acts as a storehouse, a manufacturing hub, and a processing plant. And each of these functions involves so many important subtasks that without the liver, our bodies would simply stop working. One of the liver's main functions is to filter the body's blood, which it receives in regular shipments from two sources. The hepatic artery delivers blood from the heart, while the hepatic portal vein brings it from the intestine. This double delivery fills the liver with nutrients that it then sorts, processes, and stores with the help of thousands of tiny internal processing plants known as lobules. Both blood flows also deliver the oxygen that the liver needs to function. The blood that is received from the intestine contains carbohydrates, fats, and vitamins and other nutrients dissolved in it from the food you've consumed. These must be processed in different ways. In the case of carbohydrates, the liver breaks them down and converts them into sugars for the body to use as energy when the filtered blood is sent back out. Sometimes the body has leftovers of nutrients that it doesn't immediately require. When that happens, the liver holds some back and stacks them in its storage facility. This facility works like a pantry for future cases when the body might be in need of nutrients. But the blood flowing into the liver isn't always full of good things. It also contains toxins and byproducts that the body can't use, and the liver monitors these strictly. When it spots a useless or toxic substance, it either converts it into a product that can't hurt the body, or isolates it and whisks it away, channeling it through the kidneys and intestine to be excreted. Of course, we wouldn't consider the liver a factory if it didn't also manufacture things. This organ makes everything from various blood plasma proteins that transport fatty acids and help form blood clots, to the cholesterol that helps the body create hormones. It also makes vitamin D and substances that help digestion. But one of its most vital products is bile. Like an eco-friendly treatment plant, the liver uses cells called hepatocytes to convert toxic waste products into this bitter greenish liquid. As it's produced, bile is funneled into a small container below the liver, called the gallbladder, before being trickled into the intestine to help break down fats, destroy microbes, and neutralize extra stomach acid. Bile also helps carry other toxins and byproducts from the liver out of the body. So as you can see, the liver is an extremely efficient industrial site, performing multiple tasks that support each other. But such a complex system needs to be kept running smoothly by keeping it healthy and not overloading it with more toxins than it can handle. This is one factory we simply can't afford to shut down.
And with her new teeth, she can take on more solid foods. Digestion starts in the mouth. Teeth grind up the food. Then, special glands under the tongue pump out saliva to help break down and lubricate the food on its 12-hour, 13-foot journey through the gut. It'll pass from the stomach into the coils of the small intestine before finally passing into the large intestine. Waves of contracting muscle keep the food moving, a process called peristalsis. These contractions are so powerful, we can even eat upside down. For the first time, a new camera shows a high-definition view of how food travels through our bodies and into our stomachs. Food enters the stomach through a hole at the top. The stomach is a bag of muscle that churns, squashes, and squeezes food into liquid. At the same time, acids break the food down. The stomach walls protect themselves with a lining of mucus. Without it, the acids could digest parts of the stomach itself, causing stomach ulcers. About an hour later, the stomach squeezes the broken down food out through a tiny hole called the pyloric sphincter. The food enters the small intestine, an 11-foot coil of tube where we absorb most of the nutrients. The interior wall of the small intestine is lined with millions of microscopic projections called villi. These increase the surface area of the gut, making it easier to absorb nutrients. First, the pancreas pumps out a juice that neutralizes stomach acid. Then bile from the liver breaks down the fats into tiny droplets. Smaller droplets are easier for the intestine to absorb. After an hour and a half, the small intestine has absorbed most of the nutrients from the food. It's time for what remains to move on. It enters the large intestine through this, the ileocecal sphincter, a valve that keeps our food from going back where it came from. What's left is a mix of waste food and dead cells from the walls of the gut. The large intestine's main job is to extract water from it. Lots of bacteria live here too, but it isn't because of an infection. We actually need them. They produce enzymes that break down complex carbohydrates in our food, carbohydrates we couldn't otherwise digest. Finally, after about 12 hours, we expel what's left of our first meal.
It's a hot day, and you've just downed several glasses of water, one after the other. Behind the sudden urge that follows are two bean-shaped organs that work as fine-tuned internal sensors. They balance the amount of fluid in your body, detect waste in your blood, and know when to release the vitamins, minerals, and hormones you need to stay alive. Say hello to your kidneys. The main role of these organs is to dispose of waste products and to turn them into urine. The body's 8 liters of blood pass through the kidneys between 20 and 25 times each day, meaning that together, these organs filter about 180 liters every 24 hours. The ingredients in your blood are constantly changing as you ingest food and drink, which explains why the kidneys need to be on permanent duty. Blood enters each kidney through arteries that branch and branch until they form tiny vessels that entwine with special internal modules called nephrons. In each kidney, 1 million of these nephrons form a powerful array of filters and sensors that carefully sift through the blood. This is where we see just how refined and accurate this internal sensing system is. To filter the blood, each nephron uses 2 powerful pieces of equipment, a blob-like structure called a glomerulus, and a long stringy straw-like tubule. The glomerulus works like a sieve, allowing only certain ingredients, such as vitamins and minerals, to pass into the tubule. Then, this vessel's job is to detect whether any of those ingredients are needed in the body. If so, they're reabsorbed in amounts that the body needs so they can circulate in the blood again. But the blood doesn't only carry useful ingredients. It contains waste products too, and the nephrons have to figure out what to do with them. The tubules sense compounds the body doesn't need, like urea, left over from the breakdown of proteins, and redirects them as urine out of the kidneys and through 2 long sewers called ureters. These tubes empty their contents into the bladder to be discharged, ridding your body of that waste once and for all. There's water in that urine too. If the kidney detects too much of it in your blood, for instance, when you've chugged several glasses at once, it sends the extra liquid to the bladder to be removed. On the other hand, low water levels in the blood prompt the kidney to release some back into the bloodstream, meaning that less water makes it into the urine. This is why urine appears yellower when you're less hydrated. By controlling water, your kidneys stabilize the body's fluid levels. But this fine balancing act isn't the kidney's only skill. These organs have the power to activate vitamin D to secrete a hormone called renin that raises blood pressure, and another hormone called erythropoietin, which increases red blood cell production. Without the kidneys, our bodily fluids would spiral out of control. Every time we ate, our blood would receive another load of unsifted ingredients. Soon, the buildup of waste would overload our systems and we'd expire. So each kidney not only keeps things running smoothly, it also keeps us alive. Lucky then that we have 2 of these magical beans.
The skeletal system includes all the bones of the body, plus the joints where they attach to each other. Our skeleton protects our internal organs, provides a framework or scaffolding that allows us to stand upright and move, stores minerals that our body needs to function properly, and produces blood cells. Our muscles, pulling this way or that way on our bones, produce movement. And without the protection of our skeleton, even a simple bump on the head or chest could injure vital internal organs. Pound for pound, the bones of the skeletal system are stronger than steel. The skeletal system is made up of 206 different bones, which come in 4 basic shapes. Long bones, such as the femur. Short bones, like the wrist and ankle bones. Flat bones, such as those in the skull or scapula. And irregular bones, like the vertebrae. There are 2 types of bone tissue. Compact bone, which is dense, smooth, and very strong, and cancellous bone, which is spongy and lightweight. Both types of bone tissue contain living cells, which help make repairs if a bone is injured or broken. A typical long bone has a main shaft called the diaphysis, composed of compact bone, and 2 ends called epiphyses, composed of cancellous bone. The main shaft is covered with a membrane of living cells called periosteum, to which muscles and tendons attach themselves. Inside the main shaft is a cavity called the medullary cavity, which contains bone marrow. Bone marrow stores fat, produces blood cells, and plays an important part in the body's immune system. The skeletal system is divided into 2 divisions. The axial skeleton, which consists of bones that form the longitudinal axis of the body, and the appendicular skeleton, which consists of bones that are appended to the axial skeleton. The axial skeleton includes 80 bones comprising the skull, vertebral column, and thorax. The appendicular skeleton consists of the bones of the shoulders, upper extremities, hips, and lower extremities. The bones of the upper extremities, or arms, are connected to the axial skeleton via the shoulder girdle. This consists of the scapula, or shoulder blade, and the clavicle, or collarbone. The arm itself is composed of the humerus, or upper arm, and the radius, and ulna of the forearm, plus the wrist and hand, which consist of 27 separate bones. Because of this large number of small bones, our hands are capable of more movement than any other part of our body. The bones of the lower extremities, or legs, are connected to the axial skeleton via the pelvic girdle, which is formed by the 2 hip bones. It protects the bladder, reproductive organs, lower colon, and rectum. In the male, the pubic arch of the pelvis is less than 90 degrees wide. In the female, greater than 90 degrees. This difference in width is necessary for the female pelvis to accommodate childbirth. The longest, heaviest, and strongest bone in the body is the femur, commonly called the thigh bone. At one end, it is connected to the pelvis, and at the other end, to the lower leg, which is made up of the tibia, or shin bone, and fibula. The tibia bears all of our body's weight. The fibula bears no weight at all. The patella, or kneecap, is a large bone between the femur and fibula. It protects the knee joint and tendons that form the knee. The bones of the ankle and foot must carry all of our body weight as we stand, walk, or run. And the 26 bones and 33 joints that make up our ankle and foot enable it to do just that. The entire skeletal system of an average adult weighs less than 10 kilograms. If you attempted to replace this with a steel skeleton that was just as strong, it would weigh 400 kilograms and still would not have the resilience of bone or the ability to repair itself. Harder than reinforced concrete, lighter than stainless steel, able to repair itself, bone is the near perfect material to provide the framework for the human body.
In 1997, a French woman named Jeanne Calment passed away after 122 years and 164 days on this earth, making her the oldest known person in history. Her age was so astounding that a millionaire pledged $1 million to anyone who could break her record. But in reality, living to this age or beyond is a feat that very few, maybe even no humans, are likely to accomplish. Human bodies just aren't built for extreme aging. Our capacity is set at about 90 years. But what does aging really mean? And how does it counteract the body's efforts to stay alive? We know intuitively what it means to age. For some, it means growing up, while for others, it's growing old. Yet finding a strict scientific definition of aging is a challenge. What we can say is that aging occurs when intrinsic processes and interactions with the environment, like sunlight and toxins in the air, water, and our diets, cause changes in the structure and function of the body's molecules and cells. Those changes in turn drive their decline and subsequently the failure of the whole organism. The exact mechanisms of aging are poorly understood, but recently scientists have identified 9 physiological traits, ranging from genetic changes to alterations in a cell's regenerative ability, that play a central role. Firstly, as the years pass, our bodies accumulate genetic damage in the form of DNA lesions. These occur naturally when the body's DNA replicates, but also in non-dividing cells. Organelles called mitochondria are especially prone to this damage. Mitochondria produce adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, the main energy source for all cellular processes. Plus, mitochondria regulate many different cell activities and play an important role in programmed cell death. If mitochondrial function declines, then cells, and later on whole organs, deteriorate too. Other changes are known to occur in the expression patterns of genes, also known as epigenetic alterations, that affect the body's tissues and cells. Genes silenced or expressed only at low levels in newborns become prominent in older people, leading to the development of degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, which accelerate aging. Even if we could avoid all these harmful genetic alterations, not even our own cells could save us. The fact remains that cellular regeneration, the very stuff of life, declines as we age. The DNA in our cells is packaged within chromosomes, each of which has 2 protective regions at the extremities called telomeres. Those shorten every time cells replicate. When telomeres become too short, cells stop replicating and die, slowing the body's ability to renew itself. With age, cells increasingly grow senescent too, a process that halts the cell cycle in times of risk, like when cancer cells are proliferating. But the response also kicks in more as we age, halting cell growth and cutting short their ability to replicate. Aging also involves stem cells that reside in many tissues and have the property of dividing without limits to replenish other cells. As we get older, stem cells decrease in number and tend to lose their regenerative potential, affecting tissue renewal and maintenance of our organs' original functions. Other changes revolve around cells' ability to function properly. As they age, they stop being able to do quality control on proteins, causing the accumulation of damaged and potentially toxic nutrients, leading to excessive metabolic activity that could be fatal for them. Intercellular communication also slows, ultimately undermining the body's functional ability. There's a lot we don't yet understand about aging. Ultimately, does longer life as we know it come down to diet, exercise, medicine, or something else? Will future technologies like cell-repairing nanobots or gene therapy artificially extend our years? And do we want to live longer than we already do? Starting with 122 years as inspiration, there's no telling where our curiosity might take us.
Your brain, the most complex organ in your body, the seat of who we are, what we are, the container for our thoughts and our memories. In short, we are our brains. Our brains are built from many parts that perform different functions. Deep in the centre of the brain is the brainstem. This is the oldest part of the brain and has also been called the reptilian brain. It controls many essential functions such as breathing and heart rate or blood pressure. It's whether we feel hungry or thirsty. It's also the seat of our most fundamental emotions: happiness or sadness, fear and love or hate. They all seem to reside in the brainstem. Sitting atop the brainstem is the thalamus. This is like an older version of our brain, which now acts as a gateway to the higher cortical regions. All sensory information from our bodies, whether it's sensations from the skin or sense of touch, passes through the thalamus and is directed to the correct regions of the cortex for further processing. Surrounding the thalamus is a structure called the hippocampus. This is a crucial part of the brain. It's the seat of our spatial working memory. It lets us remember where we put those keys, or how to get back home from work or school. This region has even been shown to be bigger in London cabbies after doing the knowledge. The folded outer surface of the brain is called the cerebral cortex. Although it all looks the same, it's actually divided into different lobes that perform very different roles. The occipital lobe contains the visual cortex, and so is concerned mainly with vision. The parietal lobe is concerned with processing sensory information and integrating it with the visual information from the occipital lobe. The temporal lobe is the centre for memory and learning. It contains the hippocampus and a number of other regions that are required for us to recognise different objects, faces, sounds and environments. The frontal lobe is probably the most important part of the brain for defining us as who we are. It's where our higher emotions and personality reside, as well as language and social behaviour, lots of the things that we think of as being human. It's our decision-making centre. It contains the motor cortex, which controls voluntary movement. At the back of the brain are the two lobes of the cerebellum. This region of the brain is a coordinating centre for movement, allowing us to move multiple sets of muscles in a coordinated fashion so that we can walk and talk, pick things up and put things down. So what are our brains made of? Muscle or bone? Well, there's none of that in the brain, even though it takes over a fifth of the calories you eat just to keep it running. Instead, your brain is made up of billions upon billions of cells, called neurons. These cells are very specialised, with long extensions through which they talk to each other and form large and complex networks. These networks are the basis of how the brain does what it does. The processes are of two basic types. Dendrites receive incoming information from other neurons. Signals pass through the cell body or soma, where, if sufficient information is received, a signal is passed to the other neurons via the axon. This is happening in billions of neurons across the brain, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's happening right now while you're watching this. So how do neurons talk to each other? Neurons are usually seen to use electrical signals to communicate. However, the act of passing the signal from one neuron to another is actually a chemical process. This happens at structures called synapses. These are formed from the terminal of an axon and a swelling on the dendrite called a spine. Electrical signals from the axon pass to the dendrite via a chemical messenger called a neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitter is stored in small vesicles inside the axon terminal, or the presynaptic bootle. When a signal arrives down the axon, one or more of these vesicles joins with the outer membrane of the bootle and releases its contents into a small gap between the axon and dendrite. This is the synaptic cleft. On the other side of the synaptic cleft are receptor molecules to which the transmitter binds in much the same way as a key fits into a lock. The receptor molecules act as pores through the outer membrane of the dendritic spine, allowing charged atoms or ions to cross. This entry of charged ions into the spine recreates the signal that was sent from the previous neuron. In this way, information can be passed from one neuron to the next and around the neuronal network. Although we've seen only one neuron here talking to one other neuron, in reality each neuron talks to many others and can have thousands upon thousands of spines. In this way, an extraordinarily complex system can be built that allows us to see, hear, to experience the world around us. It allows us to walk and talk, and to laugh and cry, and to be who we are. So we really are our brain.
Gonna be with us when you look in my eyes. Look in my eyes, what can you see? Look in my eyes, what can you find?
Thanks for watching this presentation from Maximilian. Rainbows, eyes, dreams, and the human body. Thank you once again and take care everyone. Have a great day. And don't forget to share, subscribe, and like. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.